Mulla feeds his coat, a Sufi tale. The Sultan held a sumptuous feast at the palace. Mulla Nasruddin watched as finely dressed guests arrived at the palace gate. He fingered his tattered rags and compared them to the elegant silks and satins on the people who entered the festivities. His stomach growled with hunger. He thought about the fine food served at the banquet. Led by his stomach, he walked up to the gate and presented himself to the guards. Since, by custom, hospitality demanded that he not be turned away, the guards allowed him into the feast. The guards, however, ushered him discreetly to a seat at the very end of the banquet table. Delicious food arrived on great trays carried by well-groomed servants. But by the time the trays arrived at the end of the table, there was nothing for Mulla. Mulla sadly left his unused plate and wandered out of the palace gate. He went to the home of a rich friend and explained what had just happened. Mulla asked, "May I borrow a fine suit of clothes?" The friend gave Mulla rich clothes and an expensive turban to top his elegant attire. Mulla returned to the palace and presented himself at the gate. When the guards saw him so well dressed, they did not recognize him. Thinking he was a visiting prince, the guards bowed low before him. Respectfully, the guards escorted him inside and seated him at the head of the table. More trays of food arrived, and servants piled delicacies on Mulla's plate. Before long, everyone was staring at Mulla. He had rubbed curry into his sleeve. He had poured wine on his turban. He had smashed roasted eggplant all over his cloak. Finally, the guest seated next to him was moved to awkwardly inquire, "Pray tell, but why have you rubbed messy food into your fine attire?" "1,000 pardons," said Mulla, "if my clothes now look the worst. But it was these clothes that brought me all this food. It is only fair that they be fed first." In this story, Mulla Nasruddin is denied food even though he is starving. He is deemed unworthy due to the state of his clothes. In today's society, there are millions just like Mulla who are being denied food even though they are starving, based on similar arbitrary measurements. My questions for you today are this: what are those arbitrary measurements? How did we come by them? And how do we remove them so that no one starves in the future? Share your answer with a family member or friend this week, or at coffee hour after the service.